Welcome to the third season of the Think Wildlife podcast. I would like to thank all the supporters who have been passionately listening to the podcast since season 1, which started in January 2023. Today, in episode 1 of season 3, I speak to Gilad Goren, who is the executive director of the NatureTech collective. This is a non-profit member alliance, accelerator, and intelligence unit that is advancing the uptake of nature-based solutions to integrate nature protection into all sectors of society. The alliance is supporting various nature tech startups around the world to upscale their impact. In this episode, we talk about some of these initiatives and also the state of the nature tech industry and how technology can lead the way to support conservation and tackle the climate crisis. Tune into this episode and do let me know what you think. But before we start this episode, I would like to make a small announcement. Starting from this season, I will be providing listeners with the option to upgrade to a paid subscription. Do not worry, this is completely optional and the podcast will not be behind a paywall. But this subscription will allow me to expand the podcast and hopefully even start a video podcast. Additionally, I will be donating 30% of the revenue from these subscriptions to various wildlife NGOs, which include the NGOs which appear on the podcast or other NGOs which listeners have suggested. For this episode, I will be looking for the leading wildlife NGOs working on incorporating tech into their solutions. So, if you have any suggestions, do let me know. If you are willing to support the podcast financially, you can do so on Substack or YouTube. Welcome to the podcast, Gilad. It's a pleasure to have you on today.
Sure. Yeah, pleasure's all mine. Happy to spread the message of nature tech to the world.
So, what got you interested in nature tech?
My background is really in the nexus of tech, impact, and entrepreneurship. Sort of been where I've been playing for the last 15 years. And most recently, call my past life before I'm running a nonprofit, is I was a co-founder of an impact blockchain company by the name of BitGreen. And we started with a vision of democratizing impact investing writ large, and very quickly came to the realization that, uh, well, the SEC is not a big fan of using blockchain as a means for doing this, at least not yet. So the regulations were just incredible hurdles. And at the same time, there was an interesting interchange between tokenization and Web3 and the world of carbon. And so we started exploring that, realizing that this space, a little less regulated, in a good way, um, and there's a lot of opportunities. So I began exploring that space. We started building, marketplace infrastructure, and as a result, I had a crash course MBA on the space of nature credits, um, starting with the marketplace and moving up towards what project finance is, what MRV is, what the frontline communities are embracing with. So even at one point, I was helping put together a massive Red Plus project in Peru that was indigenous led, and it basically I learned so many of the challenges that this space faces. And that opened me up to moving beyond carbon to biodiversity credits, to nature credits, and then to the world of nature tech and the role it plays. Um, when it got a little tough as startups, as it happens for often for startups, funding got low and I basically fired myself so that the company could survive. And I'm glad to say that it's surviving and thriving. At that point, I already made contact with the MRV Collective. And the MRV Collective, one of the members reached out when they saw kind of my update on LinkedIn, and they asked me to join and take over as the first executive director for what at the time was an organically built uh, community, if you will. I said yes because number one, um, NatureTech is a small and emerging category that I got really excited about because I saw how many of the pitfalls are created by a lack of data certainty. It's what's been keeping back, frankly, us from closing the nature finance gap writ large. And then separately, it was a space that needed a nonprofit. And I am not one to always jump into the world of nonprofits. I think nonprofits have a role to play. Often it's limited, to be honest. But when you're talking about an emergent space where private sector funds can't really flow freely in a for-profit setting because it's too early to really, pick your winners if you're investing for, like a VC. And and there isn't enough traction for a corporate to get involved yet. Not, I mean, apart from pioneers, you need a nonprofit to come in and build a capacity for that sector. And so that's what got me excited about MRV Collective, which is now the NatureTech Collective.
Recently, you guys published a report about the nature fintech sector map. Talk about this. What exactly is the nature fintech and what role does it have in tackling the biodiversity and climate crisis?
Yeah, so the nature fintech sector map has been out for a bit, and we're recording this on the 14th of October, and next week COP16 will happen, which is the biggest gathering of stakeholders around the world of biodiversity, and that will happen in Cali. We'll be there, and we'll actually be debuting the first ever Nature Tech taxonomy and the 2024 Nature Tech report. The nature fintech map we thought is very important to focus on because whereas the world of nature tech is essentially not necessarily a new spate of technologies. Many of the technologies in nature tech are technologies that you would find in the world of climate tech, ag tech, the defense industry. So satellites, AI, IoT, all the buzzwords really, blockchain. Where NatureTech differentiates is that its focus is on transitioning the world economy towards a nature positive state. And that's the difference. We're not trying to maximize productivity for the sake of productivity. We're trying to shift the entire understanding of how capitalism, how the economy works with nature to reach an effective coexistence with nature. And whereas conservation, regenerative ag, industrial change, those are top-down clusters, and that'll be reflected in the nature tech taxonomy. Um, finance. Finance presents the sort of horizontal view. It's the pipes, it's the lubricant, it is the incentive that can generate a move towards planetary health. And if nature finance is the call it the why, right? It's the incentive to drive funds towards closing the nature finance gap. We're putting money in the form of nature-linked bonds, for example, or we're incentivizing investment to a certain space. A lot of really amazing, innovative financial instruments are coming up. Fintech is the how. How are we actually going to move money from, Zurich or San Francisco to the Shipibo people by Iquitos or to the frontline communities in the Congo Basin? So nature fintech is the important piping that makes it all happen, and no one's really covered it. And so what we try to do with the report is show, oh, there is an active ecosystem, and oh, you no longer have excuses. Because nature fintech is your tool for getting money to the front lines in a sort of the least amount of intermediaries, the least amount of money lost along the way. And its perfect partner is all the technologies that are bringing in the transparency and the connection, which is sending data back towards San Francisco, towards Zurich, to make sure that their money is being spent in the way they intend. And that's where nature tech really can play an incredible role.
So now continuing with nature fintech, let's talk about its role with the private sector. So how is tech helping with disclosures related to nature-related risk exposures and helping corporates with environmental compliance frameworks?
I think the first thing you need to do is kind of step back from the disclosure frameworks that are super, super important innovation in the space. Because these disclosure frameworks, TNFD, CSRD, the tools that are GRI provides, all the alphabet soup, they provide a map, if you will. They tell you how to basically, well, they don't tell you how to collect the data. They tell you what data needs to be collected and what you need to prove in order to be on the right side. Where NatureTech plays a role is in providing a feasible suite of tools for the actual nature data collection, for the sense making, and for the sharing. When TNFD and all these other frameworks came up, and this is all recent, by the way, as you well know, the nature disclosure frameworks, the private sector was sort of in shock. If we thought TCFD, if we thought disclosing on carbon is hard, one could only imagine how difficult it is to disclose on nature, right? There's that adage around carbon, a ton is a ton is a ton. Well, what's a ton of biodiversity, right? What's a ton of soil erosion? It's so nuanced. It's so biome specific. It's so cause specific. The interventions. Oh yeah, by the way, we don't actually know what the state of nature is in the first place. And that is the underlying, or call it the original sin of this all. Because we don't have an accurate assessment of where we are in terms of nature's health right now, because there hasn't been a framework to collect data written like for everyone, right? We don't have, if you want to check the weather right now in Timbuktu, you take your phone, you go to the weather app, and you'll get a pretty accurate assessment. Why? Is because we have these labs that are collecting meteorological data. It's done constantly, it's getting better and better, and voila, we have an answer. We don't have that for nature. Nature Tech provides the tools for doing so. So now we go back to your question around disclosure frameworks. Without Nature Tech, we're screwed. Are we just going to send a whole bunch of, ecologists to start measuring trees? And what are we going to do about the entire supply chain, right? Which has been it's been so convoluted so that McDonald's on purpose doesn't know where its beef is coming from. So maybe there's some ability to say, hey, I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know if it's bad or good. And Nature Tech could actually unravel this Gordian knot and actually do something about it. Um, and we're at this all hands on deck moment, especially at COP16. TNFD and the other frameworks, the private sector's coming in, the NGO sector, we're all coming in to actually solve for this. And that's a role, that's part of our mission at Nature Tech Collective is to be the sort of convening and directing body to solve for the big challenges that would enable us to close this nature data gap, which will make it easier both for disclosure, but the other part of it is the investment part, which is no less important.
In the recent times, nature tech has been mostly used for monitoring biodiversity and carbon offsets, and those it's basically been very limited to monitoring of conservation. But what are some of the uses of nature tech in actual practical conservation and restoration?
You bring a good point. A lot of the space traditionally, and by traditionally, I mean the last few years, has been thought more of like conservation tech. Right? That's another sort of term that's bandied about, which is very important. But as the name suggests, it focuses on conservation. The way we define nature tech. So I mentioned what the mission of nature tech, why it exists, is raison d'être. What it covers in terms of transitions is definitely conservation and restoration of the different biomes, right? So from forestry to anti-desertification towards revitalization of oceans and freshwater. Um, and the way I see it, and it's a bit sophomoric, but it helps me. Um, I see conservation as like no man's land, right? That's the areas where we want nature to reside and thrive in as little human touch as possible. And then there's regenerative ag, which is another huge, huge bucket. And that is the transition from industrial agriculture towards the more nature friendly, nature positive um, agricultural landscape. And that's sort of in the middle, right? So we want the crops, we want the animals to grow, but for our purposes. Um, and then the third piece is the realm of humans, the built environment, transportation, supply lines, and we bucket in finance there. In all three of those transition buckets, nature tech plays a crucial role. That taxonomy the point is to actually drill down to the specific challenges and the solutions. So you'll have that available in a week. So yes, we go far beyond conservation in terms of where nature tech can play a role. And then in terms of what we do, we basically have a shorthand we call the five M's. So nature tech is active in the role of market pressures. So collecting information and sharing it to induce pressure on companies to do something. And that's related obviously to the disclosure frameworks, the measurement, the MRV, monitoring, reporting, verification. So that's use of things like DNA, eDNA rather, or eRNA, bioacoustics, satellite imagery, and everything else in between in order to collect information to see what's there. The modeling, which is no less important, that's your sense making. So a startup like Nala or NatCap Research or Dunia or others take that information and actually make it human readable so that then companies can report in a much easier way. Making is the fourth M. Making, moving, we like our M's. The idea is that we have technology to actually deploy interventions. So drone-based seeding or wildfire prevention, algae-based fertilizers. It's a whole slew of solutions that are actually intervening and making and getting us towards a healthier planetary economy. And then the last bit is monetization. And how do you actually incentivize it with money, right? So that's things like nature credits, NACs, which are essentially natural asset companies, listing companies on the stock exchange, where the companies represent essentially the river. Really interesting innovations in that space. And those are the five categories of nature tech in terms of the technology and the solutions.
So one drawback of nature tech and specifically AI is the high electricity demands, and many critiques of using technology for conservation and nature restoration is that AI uses too much carbon. I mean, it emits too much carbon through electricity. And wait, I'll rephrase. Sorry, I lost my thought. So, uh, there's been a lot of criticism of using nature tech and AI for conservation and nature restoration because of its high electricity demands, which obviously increases its carbon output. So, what is your opinion in this regard?
Well, I've never heard this criticism before as it relates to nature tech. I guess we're talking AI. AI and blockchain, maybe, though blockchain is mostly no longer an issue aside from Bitcoin, and no one really is using Bitcoin for nature tech. So we don't have to claim blockchain as a problem. The AI piece is, this is part of a wider conversation that needs to happen. There's two things to consider. One is, unfortunately, we're in a state where we cannot rely on government regulation alone to do the job. In an ideal world, government regulates. There is a carbon tax, there is a biodiversity related tax. That's not going to happen globally. There's certain areas where there is um, regulatory based compulsion, which is great. For example, biodiversity net gain is the law of the land in the UK. So companies in the real estate space or anyone who has a physical sort of footprint must support biodiversity related actions, which basically makes up for any potential hazard plus 10%. In effect, they created a compliance biodiversity credits marketplace, which is amazing. Is that going to happen in the States? I'm not going to build on it anytime soon. So if regulation is not something we can rely on solely, in behavioral change, let's be real. I love humans. They're not the easiest to convince writ large. So I don't want to rely on that solely. Then tech, we're going to tech our way out of it. We're going to innovate our way out of it. And I'm not putting all my eggs in that one basket, but we have to because it's our strongest card right now. And AI is a paradigm shifter. Everything people say about AI, It's true. It's the scariest thing, and it's the thing that's going to save us, and everything in between. But it's already proven. Like if you look at something like Google AlphaFold, the amount they're just creating new IP and new IP related to medicine, life-saving medicine. AI is proven in that it is basically enabling this whole world of us being able to speak with animals. Like that's literally something that's starting to happen. Um, but even before we speak with animals, the ability to identify, there's a great nonprofit startup nonprofit called Rainforest Connection. They put microphones in the jungle and they basically record whatever sounds they hear and they use AI. They use machine learning and AI in order to decipher how many species of birds are there, which ones, how much they have. But then also, is that a chainsaw? Are those poachers? They're able to get all of that, and none of that can happen without AI. So we're talking about the most high value biomes. There's no chance you'll understand what they are unless we have tech-powered MRV and modeling technologies. Because A, we can't have humans go there, and B, we don't want them to. So I would say the potential benefits of AI outweigh the detriments, especially because we're increasingly getting better in reducing our footprint and in finding ways to offset. Um, at this point, carbon is basically a just add water situation, right? We just need budget in order to take us to net zero. It's just a matter of time and incentives. We don't have that for biodiversity. We could reduce carbon and bring it back to before. Once a species goes extinct, unless we want to start now investing a lot of money in bringing back species, and there's people that are doing it with the mammoth. Okay, so it might go to the charismatic species, right? We maybe bring back the giant sloth, but who wants to bring back, you know, um, slug number 3,500? So this is truly the race against time. And I don't think we have time to think about the carbon implications of AI if AI is really our way to a new paradigm of conservation. Yeah, I'll set it
Yep.
there.
I do agree.
Spicy take.
I also do feel like the benefits outweigh the carbon argument, especially because a lot of the activities have a far greater carbon impact in the long run. Like deforestation has a far greater impact in the long run than using I guess. So, talk about the NTC Sector Intelligence Unit.
Yeah, so as I said, MRV Collective was the first iteration. We converted it. We basically rebranded as the NatureTech Collective December of last year. And part of the move is to number one, encapsulate all of NatureTech, obviously. And number two is because where we started as sort of the supply side, NatureTech solution providers. Um, And coming in as executive director, one of the sort of the learnings I wanted to bring from my past work is that you can't just build in silo. So one of the problems about Web3, one of the things that have held it back in terms of adoption is that traditionally, I mean, mostly it was a lot of developers building and getting really excited about products. And that's one of the biggest challenges is when you're product led, you don't actually think about what the buyers want. You build things that are just not going to work for the buyer. And in order to preclude that challenge, we very quickly decided to open up our work as much as possible towards the buy side. So that's the corporates, the private sectors, the financial institutions, the big NGOs, the governments, the project developers. So over the past year, we've been bringing more and more of those cohorts into the mix. And part of the way to get them in, and frankly, it also adds a ton of value to our startups, our NatureTech solutions, is in creating materials that do a lot of the education and sense making for NatureTech. There's still an awareness curve that we need to flatten. People hear NatureTech, they kind of think they know what it is, but they don't really. I mean, the taxonomy we're putting on next week will be the first true NatureTech taxonomy ever. And so the Sector Intelligence Unit is putting out these reports, these sector maps. We're also running webinars. We're going to be doing a lot of publishing. And we now have an amazing new content marketing manager who's going to be just driving a ton of informational content. And the goal is number one, as a public good, to make it easier for a company to go from, oh no, I just signed up for some disclosure commitment to, oh, I got this because I know that, for this supply chain, I use this, for that, I use that. Our job is to shorten the gap, shorten that path between I have to do something to I know what I'm doing right now. And that's the point of the sector intelligence. And it's matched with this other part, which we kind of call a corporate accelerator. And that's when a company, and we have a few of them right now, they have a challenge and they're looking for support in solving for the challenge. We basically build them a curriculum that goes from solidifying and crystallizing the challenge, really understanding what it is, what's the available sort of information about it, educational content, and then drive towards a process of matchmaking. And I mean, we obviously prioritize our members, but anyone who's a fit, we bring in, and then we help them decide, help the client decide um, what the short list is. And then we would run live demo days, in person or virtual, and we get them towards, this is a process that without support could take years. And I know this from experience, having done enterprise sales in my past life. We bring this down to like 3 to 4 months, which could be a game changer for many on both sides, honestly, both the corporates and the startups.
So, for those people who are looking to get into nature tech and start their own initiatives, what would your advice be? Where would be a good point to start and to learn about the industry as a whole and get their hands dirty?
I mean, this is a shameless self plug, but it is a good reason. I think it's the best way to do it, and that's to join us. If you already have a startup or you're in this space and you're looking for support, community, and all the rest, obviously our doors are open. If you are not yet in this space, you're looking to learn more, reach out to us. We're happy to put you in the right direction. There's a lot of material that's coming out. A lot of it's ours, but there's a lot of other stuff. Um, you could get involved in existing startups or our solutions and support them. Maybe get a gig that way, get inspired. There's a lot of corporates that get into the space. Broadly speaking, nature is massive industry and it's just going to keep growing. The way climate tech was growing, it's nothing compared to what nature is going to be because nature is so much bigger. Climate is actually part of the planetary boundary. It's one of the facets of the nature challenge. And so literally every company is going to have a nature strategy. Think of that. Literally every company, because we're all impacted by it. I mean, just look at, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, they just happened in the States. A friend of mine is in Asheville, and she's just telling me how it's the damage and destruction and pain has been underreported. And there's hundreds and hundreds of people who may be gone. And it's because, frankly, no one ever expected a hurricane to hit mountains and cause this kind of damage. And that's going to be the new normal. So literally every facet of our economy is going to be under pressure. And so from a job opportunity, they're boundless. So first step, get involved with the community, either our community, which we invite you to, or any other communities in the space. There's more of them popping. And in terms of setting yourself up for success, I mean, yes, you can take the more traditional route, go the path of science, go the path of applied science, so ecologists, biologists, and then do the work in the field. If that's not your calling, that's cool too. I didn't go this way. I studied history. There's the entrepreneur path, which is working with the experts and finding areas where their science has not been applied yet, not been commercialized yet, not been productized yet. Obviously, if you're into communications and marketing, God knows scientists need a lot of help there. Literally everything you do, every skill set you have is relevant to the nature tech space because it's so big and it will be bigger. So yeah, just get started.
So let's talk about the tech skills specifically. Like, what do you think will be the most crucial tech skills for like a 21-year-old or 22-year-old in university to learn to make an impact for nature and the climate crisis?
Gosh, it's a really hard question. uh, like I said, literally everything. Like, yes, you could specialize in GIS, you could specialize in ecology, you could specialize in biology conservation. I think that what's necessary in this space right now. So there's the phrase that was attributed to Mark Andreessen of Andreessen Horowitz, where he said that software is eating the world, and it was meant to say that the internet and the digital revolution will impact every industry, every space. And it's sort of far proving pretty true. Our argument is that nature is at this situation, and the reason why it's happened is because where it used to be the world of theoretical mathematicians, and then moved into applied mathematicians, and then into engineers, right? And then eventually software developers, and eventually now everyone can be a developer. Everyone could, I mean, now with AI, right? You don't even need to learn how to code, and you can create programs. We need to have that moment in nature where we're moving from the PhDs that are taking, it costs a lot of money to fly down to Brazil or something like that to do their work to the nature engineers. And in our case specifically, nature engineers means the people that are taking existing technologies and that are setting them up. They're collecting data samples, they're maintaining camera traps, they're reporting, they're coordinating, um, they're rapid testing and prototyping. Those engineers, that's the next, like, that's the global cadre that we need. And the unique opportunity that we have in terms of just social and environmental justice is that a lot of those engineers can be the frontline community members themselves, the people who are already there. Um, and it means compensation for a job well done. It means like remuneration for the stewardship work they're already doing in a way that is more rigorous towards philanthropists that are a little afraid to just send money blindly. That nature data should be the basically the sort of return part of the relationship for the payment. So there's a really unique opportunity to bring in that human capital. And I would say for a 21, 22-year-old who's interested in the space, whatever you're interested already, and if you care about nature as well, keep that in mind. We need more writers. We need more people that can take difficult technical conversations and bring them to, the individual. We need more marketers. We need more photographers even. Definitely need more entrepreneurs. Ideally entrepreneurs that have done something else because they have experience just commercialization. That's super important. So really all hands on deck.
So my final question is that what do you think is the way forward for Nature Tech Collective? What have been some challenges you have faced as an organization? And yeah, how can talk a bit more about how individuals can join the collective?
Yeah, so I mean, we have the basic startup challenges, right? We, as Nature Tech Collective, as the name, exists for just over a year, but overall, 2.5, call it maybe 3 years at a stretch. So we're a young, underfunded organization. Uh, this year we introduced membership fees, so our members are really becoming owners in a way, and it's been amazing on many fronts. But it's a slow progress, so we need to onboard more paid members. Um, but if you see our community in action this year versus last year, it's way more active, which is exactly what we want to see. And we're hustling to make sure the nature tech term is used ubiquitously, and it's starting to take shape. So you're starting to see the progress. Our challenges now, I would say, is maintaining and pushing the momentum. COP16 will be big for us. And then one of the things we're going to do at COP is actually we're going to put together a couple of closed door workshops where we'll bring the smartest people we know together and help us crystallize what are the highest impact um, opportunities to invest slash work on to break through where we are right now in terms of nature tech adoption value to the next level. And these are what we call the big, hairy, audacious challenges. Things like, could we set up a global standard for nature data collection and set the precedent to make nature data collection public good so the whole world gets access to it? Could we do the same thing for nature data sharing? Could we get Coke to share its water data with Pepsi? Because Coke probably has more water data than anyone else in the world. Should we build a third party institute that, in a neutral way, goes biome by biome, technology by technology, methodology by methodology, and then comes out with a playbook for what is the most effective way for, a certain intervention? For example, if you're thinking about doing regenerative cattle in the Pampas in Argentina, X and Y are the best technologies for measurement and for monitoring, and Z is the best intervention. The list of best interventions, call it silvopasture, or using Fitbit type sensors to move the cows around, whatever, right? So we're gonna hopefully by the end of the year we'll have the one or two big ticket items that we'll fight for, and that's what we'll do. Um, so our challenges is getting more people involved. Ideally, we get more project developers, we get more corporates involved, we get more NGOs involved, and more individuals that want to support to join us. And so that's our call. It's very easy to reach me, Gilad at naturetechcollective.org. Just go to the website, fill out your name. We'll get in touch with you pretty shortly. We have an amazing community lead. We have amazing members. We have an amazing ecosystem, and it's very easy to get excited every day in the morning because of the mission we're here to achieve, which is to make sure that we'll have a healthy world together, an effective coexistence between humanity and the rest of nature. So join us.
Yep, I'll be putting the links to your website and your email in the description of the podcast so that people can reach out to you directly. Yep, so that was the final question I had for you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for pushing this message forward, Anish. And any way I can help you in your work, let me know. And